You look lovely, darling.
And if anyone needs to use the shortcut is Control D on PC. If you want to mute, the shortcut is Control D on PC, and I think it's Command D on Mac.
To turn your microphone off so we don't hear everybody snoring or something in between.
Oh, my cat shouting.
My cat just dropped 2 cups of hot coffee on my floor right as I was logging in.
Of course, because that's what cats do.
Of course.
Yep, definitely.
All right, we are live. Welcome, everybody, to the Cyborgs Metal Parts and Warm Parts. And we have a bunch of lovely ladies here today to talk about Cyborgs. We have Mina Carter, Susan Hayes, Viola Grace, and I'm your moderator, Jenn Burke. So first off, I'm going to have all the ladies introduce themselves and then tag the next person to go.
Who wants to go first?
You folks.
Okay, I'll go first. I'm Susan Hayes. I write science fiction and paranormal romance, but we're here to talk about cyborgs today, and I write a whole bunch of those, including the Drift series. Jenn.
Sorry, my microphone was playing up. Hi guys, me again. It's Thompson. I write sci-fi romance and paranormal romance. I was dragged into sci-fi by Susan and Mina. It's their fault. They did it. They dragged me by my hair. Mina, your turn.
Hi, I'm Mina Carter. Like the others, I write paranormal and science fiction romance. And yes, we're going to talk about cyborgs today. So who's left? Is it Viola's turn?
I suppose it is. Hi, I'm Viola Grace. I write science fiction and fantasy and paranormal. My cyborg series is called Mechanical Advantage. And is there anybody left? I think we got them all.
Yeah, I think that's everybody. Welcome. So let's start off. Let's just go back to the intros. Where are you all calling in from?
Manitoba, Canada.
Victoria, BC, Canada.
Midlands, UK.
West Midlands, UK.
So Canada and the UK are well represented here. Okay, that's awesome. So let's start off. Let's talk about what you're working on now or what you'll be working on next. And let's go with Mina to start.
Right, at the moment I'm just about to finish the longest book in the world ever, which is Zero's Heart, which is, it's not a cyborg series, but it has a cyborg hero. And yeah, this one really grabbed me, so I'm looking forward to everybody meeting Zero.
How about we go to Jenn next?
Ooh, okay. So I finished my first cyborg story, Corin, Betraying Corin, that went into the fabulous Loved in Space anthology with 2 of these lovely ladies here. I will be starting Jorah's Revenge, which is book 2, very soon, which will give you more insight into our second hero of the series, and also giving you more information on the goat. For those that have read the story will know what I mean about the goat. Susan, your turn.
I just literally finished yesterday The Tiger and the Unicorn, which is for Eve's FUCA fucking A series, which will be coming out in July. However, that is paranormal, and this means that I am now free to return to the Drift and to my Reaper Assassin Cyborg clones, which are next. Viola. Viola?
Well, I rarely say my own name. It's something most people don't have to do, but yeah, anyway, I don't care. If you're European, it's Viola. If you're North American, it's usually Viola. You're in Victoria, so it's anyone's guess.
We're special.
You guys are very special. Anyway, my next cyborg is going to be a book called Wingman, wherein an alien being that without wings, looks close enough to pass for human as a human, decides that he wants to court a human female to give himself extra status and everything else. So he begins courting a librarian. She gives him information on the great lovers of human history. She gives him all the poetry and prose he could possibly want, all the references, all the DVDs. And as he keeps coming back for more advice, she falls in love with him. He falls in love with her. And they're both cyborgs. So it's lovely.
Aww.
It is very sweet.
All right, we have a question from one of the viewers, from Amanda Winterstein. Hi, where do you come up with for the ideas of your cyborgs? Let's start with Viola, since you're on my screen.
Oh, hi. I got the ideas from some of those art images that I can't remember the name of the artist, but he takes photographs of wounded warriors, like really muscly guys, but they just happen to have silver legs or silver arms or hooks
Michael
or
Stokes.
attachments or whatever.
Yeah, Michael
Thank
Stokes.
you.
Yeah.
Yep. Thank you. Yes, Michael Stokes. Michael Stokes photography. It's on everything that I see, and I'm horrible with names, as my editor knows all too well. But when I started seeing his photography, it started thinking that, body, just the extension of it seemed logical to me. Eventually, we're going to get better at mimicking muscle to help it move. So now, if my guys lose anything, it gets replaced with silver nanites. That's it. It's like I
Very
started
cool.
with those little photographs, and it sucked me into cyborgs.
All right, let's go on to Susan. Where do you get your inspiration for your ideas of cyborgs?
So many places. I am a diehard geek from the time I could focus my eyes. So watching Star Trek and actually the little dog bot from the original Battlestar Galactica, was the idea of robots that actually had some emotions. So it's been with me the whole, like, all through my childhood and growing up. And when I started writing mine, I wanted to make them more human than machine, but I also wanted them to have a conflict about that. And I love nanotechnology. So the combination of all that is how I got to my cyborg guys. Mwah.
Oh, yeah. So I'm the same. I'm an absolute diehard sci-fi fan. So my inspiration comes from so many different things and so many different sources. But I'm absolutely fascinated by the idea of wounded warriors and exoskeletons, that whole interplay between replacing parts again and making somebody functional. There's a very personal interest in that because my husband has a degenerative spinal injury. So at some point we are going to need to look at that kind of thing. And then I just took it one step further into fiction. So a lot of mine tends to focus on that kind of thing. Things like Ripley's exoloader, that kind of technology that then meshes with the human body with implants that drive things all that way on. So I suppose it's kind of like the opposite to the nanites, because mine don't really have a lot of nanites. They have regenerative capability, but it's definitely more on the mechanical side of things. Yep, that's where it came from. That's where it is. So Jen, your turn.
Okay, so Betraying Corin was my first delve into the world of cyborgs, thanks to those two. My inspiration in general usually comes from films. As an 80s kid, most know me to be into my cheesy as hell films. But I'm also into the whole wounded soldier, creating the perfect soldier. So Universal Soldier, obviously Terminator was a huge thing, telling you how to make a bad guy and a good guy. So it's the whole having something that looks human but is not human but wants to be human. Go down that little rabbit hole. So yeah, it's films are mostly my inspiration, and the whole wounded soldier. And I have the same issue with my husband. He seems to get himself into so much trouble with regards to sport. He needs new knees and a new shoulder. So just imagining him with nice cyborg implants is always kind of like, ooh, okay, I could do that. So yeah, that's my inspiration. And I'm a perv, so there you go.
Awesome. Okay, what made you start writing in this genre, and what made you stay? Let's start off with Mina.
Sci-fi nerd. I have always watched, read, and just absorbed anything sci-fi. So it was a natural progression for me. I also I wrote Star Trek fan fiction for very, very many years, and it was just it's where I'm comfortable, and it's kind of where I camped, and I'm not planning on moving anytime soon. Viola next. Sit you on screen.
Me? Oh,
You.
I'm on screen? Oh,
You are.
What a thing. Oh. I forget the question.
The question was, what made you start writing in the genre, and what made you stay?
Oh, right. I started writing in this genre because a lot of the cyborg fiction that I was reading at the time were confusing cyborgs with androids, people that were built to be partially mechanical. Cyborgs are people that were human who become mechanical. So the soul, the brain, the frustration, the fear, the hate, the panic, all of those emotions are still in there somewhere, and they have to be dealt with. And that's what makes me stay, because I like being therapist to the imaginary people in my head.
Don't we all?
Yeah.
Let's go to Jenn.
Okay, so as I said, I got dragged into the genre. I've always read it, with a few of my favourite sci-fi authors being Mina, Susan, and M.K. Eden. The cyborg thing was put to me at RTC last year, basically telling me, you are writing in it. Tough do it. I'd already ventured into it again with Mina, with writing Dragon Do It Better, so to get a feel of the whole sci-fi world. It is a lot different to paranormal romance, which is what I mainly do. So to transition from that, at first it can be quite difficult, but when you've got such amazing mentors like I have, you can't go wrong. Susan.
Oh, let's see. I started off writing paranormal romance because I'd never seen a science fiction romance in my wide reading. I missed them somehow. And then a friend of mine directed me to a little book called Leon's Price, which would be one of Mina's cyborg books. And I went, oh my God, this exists. And then I read Eve Longley, and then I read Viola, and then I read them all. And I'm like, I could write this. And now I do. And I will never, I will stick with writing paranormal sometimes for the fun of it, but I will never write contemporary again, because if it doesn't have fur, fangs, wings, or ray guns, it's just not going to happen. Jenn. No, not Jenn. Oh, we're done.
Yeah, I think we got everybody.
Yep.
Okay, so we had a couple of questions on the stream from Kimmy Diane Seeley. She would like to know, what do you find the most difficult thing about writing cyborg characters? Let's start off with, we'll go with Susan, since Susan is still on my screen.
Hi, Cammie. The most difficult thing about them is it's really hard to physically challenge them or cripple them or slow them down, because they're Ubermen. So physically running blockades with them and giving them challenges to stand up to physically is tough. So I tend to torture them emotionally and mentally instead. Jenn.
See, she keeps picking on me. For me, cyborgs, it's, to be honest, the whole writing cyborgs to start with, because I'm at the start of my journey, can be quite difficult for me. So I like to torture them physically, like take them apart. It seems to work. So yeah, that's what I struggle with them, but I enjoy them at the same time. They're a pleasure. Viola, your turn.
Oh dear, what's the hardest thing about the cyborgs? I'd say trying to make the physics work for me is when you're putting metal into a human body, then the other side has to be balanced. And so I made a character whose entire job it was to make sure that they were physiologically feasible and could actually get up and move around after all the implants were done. Yeah, it's like the rest, people are people. People who have to face violence for a living suffer very specific reactions and very specific injuries of the soul. And I won't say it's fun to pick those apart, but it's nice to actually kind of see them not glossed over as much. Oddly enough, in the lighter fiction, we do a better job of showing the emotional torment than a lot of the kind of higher science fiction folks do, at least from what I've read. So, Mina, why do you do it?
What I find difficult, what do I find difficult about them? It's again the thing. They're very hard to challenge because they are essentially super soldiers. So it's very hard to give them a challenge to overcome physically. But if it's all mental, then the story tends to be very one-sided and very quite weighty, even though you've got to have the mental side of it and the emotional side. So it's basically balancing the two, giving them something to overcome physically while at the same time meshing the emotional storylines through there as well. It can be really, really fine balancing it. And that's what I find most difficult and most satisfying about writing them.
All right, thank you. Another question from Amanda. Will any of you co-author a cyborg together? Anybody can jump in on that one.
No. I don't play well with others.
Mina and I are grinning because we're kind of talking about doing one of those, but we have plans. We're just not ready to actually commit to telling anybody about them yet.
There are plans.
Oh, so you're big teases.
Yes.
They are. They're really bad at that. They tease everybody, especially me, when I want to read them. Not fair.
All right. So we talked about the most difficult thing about writing cyborg characters. What do you find most appealing about them? Let's start with Jenn.
They're hot, muscly, got biceps. Yeah, sorry, that's just me being a perv. Just the versatility of a cyborg. Just the situation. The thing about sci-fi is you've got paranormal, you've got so much to expand on. Sci-fi, you have even more because you're going out of space. I just really enjoy the versatility of them, and yeah, and the fact that I like to make them nice, hot, and muscly and lickable. Susan.
One of the things I love, especially about my cyborgs, is that they were literally hatched out of maturation vats, fully grown. So in some cases, they're a strange combination of battle-hardened warriors and innocence, especially some of the ones I've written lately, because they were born after the war in secret. So balancing out their discovery of things like new foods and even colors, even stepping foot on a planet for the first time. This is all new for them, and the reaction to that are really fun to do. Viola.
Oh, jeepers. Well, I'd have to go with the muscly thing. I mean, I'm not so much on the lickable because, they're coming back with like gore and guts on them and stuff. So I'll leave the licking to Jenn. But yeah, it's kind of fun to make somebody who's at the peak of physical fitness, perfection, strong, tough, and then you give them a girl that matches. And by that, I mean, she's also a cyborg. She's strong and tough. And in one case, she broke his arm. It's fun. You get to play with them. And you can do a lot if you can, rip off a limb that you were not particularly fond of and stick in a new one. Wait, that sounds really bad. Although, yes, there was one instance of that in the entire series of Mechanical Advantage that was mentioned. So now we'll go on to who's left. Mina, are you left? Please be left.
What was the question again? Oh, what are you trying to think? I got
What do you find
distracted.
about cyborgs?
So yeah, apart from the whole big muscly super soldier thing, my cyborgs are all different classes, so they all have their own specialities. So you've got infiltration models, you've got models that are essentially tanks, and they're so rigid in their viewpoints of the world. And then their world blew up. They're all now rogues, and they have to fight for their existence, which means they're having to step outside of their comfort zones, especially when it comes to women, because they were never intended to survive long, let alone get married, have children, that kind of thing. So interaction between the sexes is something they have absolutely zero information on, zero experience with. So that's a lot of fun to play with, because I thought, oh my God, what do I do now? Or the things that their logic tells them should be okay, it doesn't work. So that's a lot of fun to play with. And yeah, that's what I find appealing. Old innocence. I suppose it's an innocence in a way, but the rigid mindset being challenged.
Awesome. Do you guys have any questions for each other?
Well, this could get dangerous.
No.
No, from Susan. Okay. Jen, do you have any questions for any of your fellow panelists about their cyborgs?
Them two need to sit down and write more. Just saying.
That's technically not a question.
And I'm just telling them, I'm taking the advantage to say, words, people, words. I need the book. Give them to me. I love you.
It would be easier to do if my flight hadn't been canceled next week.
Don't. I'm going to start crying. She was supposed to be here.
She was. But then the world closed, and no.
Yeah.
I want to get off the world.
Yeah, I'm not good with the world at the moment.
Yeah.
Not enough cake.
All right. Let's see. So we talked a little, or Susan and Mina both talked a little bit about their unique spin on cyborgs. Do you guys want to go into a little bit more depth on that, each of you, like everybody on the panel? So let's start with Susan. You talked about having your cyborgs kind of sprout fully grown from bats, which is pretty cool. So is there anything else that makes your cyborgs really unique?
There's a few things. Part of it is a lot of the stories in the drift go on with the fact that they weren't supposed to be mental self-aware really at all. They were supposed to be logically driven, totally behaviorally controlled super soldiers with no mind or actual emotion. And they hid the fact that they were emotionally attached to each other and aware until they were being destroyed at the end of the war, and then they rebelled. So my Drift series picks up about 5 years after the end of the war, where they're struggling to find their place in society, or in the case of the Drift, to carve out a place for themselves, because nobody else wants them, because they're freaking terrifying, 6.5 feet of muscle and all sorts of yummy lickableness, but they're scary. And then as time goes on, it's discovered that the corporations that controlled them didn't actually release all of them. So now we're going into rescuing the ones that were left behind. Mina?
What was the question? What's unique about them?
It's
what makes your cyborgs in particular unique? What's your unique spin?
Mine are based on the zodiac classes. So you've got Cancers, you've got Taurus, you've got Leos, and each class has a different speciality. So your Cancerian class, they are supercomputers, so they can uplink with every other cyborg in their unit, and they're a battle computer basically. The Leos, they tend to be the heavy machine gunners. Geminis are infiltration specialists. Those are usually born, or they're tank grown, like Susan's, they're tank grown. Geminis are always coming twos. My series.
I like the Geminis.
Yes. You stated this preference a couple of times. They are coming. So my timeline is a lot earlier. This series is basically just after they have rebelled. So they're trying to now rebuild their society, or even, sorry, just build a society because they haven't had one before. And they're trying to overcome their own design because they still have a lot of blocks. So an EM pulse will take them down, certain lockdown codes will take them down. They're trying to get over that now and gain autonomy over their own bodies. So that's a daily struggle for them because they're all different. Not only different classes, but they're also different models. So my main first hero was a Leo class, but he's an earlier generation model than the rest. So he is more, I won't say, not crude, but not as advanced in his design, whereas some of the others are far further along. So it's like working out which characters are what generation and what class and where they are in their journey. So I think that's fairly unique. Sorry, is Jen? Next, I'm going to pick on Jen.
Oh, cheers. Thank you. My cyborgs are relatively new, but the way the story's gone is they've been betrayed by their creators. So they're trying to escape and find somewhere that they can be safe before they try and pinpoint where the rest of their kind are. So you've got the 5 main guys that have tried to get off Earth while their base has been blown up to smithereens with a goat and called Maxine, who everybody adores, especially Bash. And yeah, it's them, how they deal with being portrayed, trying to make it out on their own, and surviving, really. Yes, so mine are all about survival and finding out who they actually are and can they be their own person instead of just being something that was created to protect the world. So, Viola.
Okay. And by the way, when Mina was talking, Jenn was staring at the screen like she was in love.
I love that series.
Yeah. My cyborgs are unique or slightly different, and that their technology was based on cosmetic alterations. 200 years before an attack, people were using nanites to do all kinds of fun things to their bodies, and it was outlawed. But the technology still existed because you can't erase technology once it exists. So when they faced an enemy that was literally taking them apart and sending back pieces, a scientist woke the technology up, revamped it for the necessary, and began using it to recycle the fighters. And so they'd be able to be sent back to the front line again and back again. And so you could always tell a newbie because he had all his parts. And what makes my series slightly different is that in the first series, well, yeah, the main cyborgs in the books are the women. There was an administration base that was making the repairs, and in a weird treaty that gets exposed in one of the later books, it gets blown up, and it takes out the administration team. And even in today's armed forces, administration teams very often are women. The medics are women. The people doing the calculations and running the budgets, they're all women. So these women were blown up and had to be repaired in the same manner as the men that they had just been fixing. So that's what the series is about. And that's why my cyborgs are slightly different. Because they're girls.
Very cool. We do have a few more questions from the audience. Amanda would like to know, how do you come up with names for the planets, especially Susan, as well as describing them?
Oh, Latin would be the very, very short answer to that. I decide what I want it to sound like, or some of the descriptions, and then I run things through the Latin translator and then Google Translate for different languages, and then I come up with a combination of sounds that sounds cool. And since they're also in audiobook now, I have to make sure it's actually pronounceable or my narrator will shoot me.
That's a very important thing. I remember that when my co-author and I were writing the Chaos Station series, and we came up with this really cool looking name for a planet. And our editor said, yeah, you got to think about if this ever goes to audio. So we had to change it. We lost Jenn. Hopefully she'll be back. Let's go to Viola. How do you name your planets?
I generally name them using the same characteristics as countries on Earth, and use little chunks of the languages from that area. Or I just make it really simple and go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. But it always is phonetically pronounceable. That's it. And Mina, how do you name your people?
I
Characters.
tend to
Planets.
Sorry? Planets. We're on planets. I tend to look at current star names, that kind of thing, and then I just shove extra A's in or extra I's and maybe a number on the end, and I have no clue whether they're pronounceable. They are in my head, but yeah. So audiobook narrators hate me because don't check whether they're pronounceable. So Jenn, I think Jenn's next. She back? She back, Jenn?
Sorry, my internet decided to boot me off and everybody went still and I couldn't see anything. What was the question?
The question's from the audience. How do you come up with names for planets as well as describing them?
I do what Mina does. I make stuff up. I kind of, well, look, I'll try and put meanings to things and like Google different versions of a name for something, look at Latin, things like that. But usually it's what Mina does, add extra couple of letters and pray to whatever God's listening that somebody could pronounce it. And who's next?
I think it's Viola.
No, I did.
Oh, you did? Okay, I think everybody's done that one then. Okay, so we have another question. Kimmy would like to know, what is the funniest thing you found when writing about cyborgs?
I didn't get all that. Sorry, you cut out.
What is the funniest thing you found when writing about cyborgs? And you can go ahead, Mina.
Funniest thing. I like to do the whole innocence thing, and they just really don't get maybe a normal phrase. They're very literal, so they tend to fall over things that a normal person would understand, but they don't. So yeah, I like to have a lot of fun with that. And I'm going to pick on Susan next.
Oh, sure. And sorry, I had to duck away. My neighbors were knocking on the door, and it's like, I can't talk right now. Bye-bye. Get 6 feet back. Funniest thing I have found. Well, it's really convenient that the cyborgs, because I do Menage cyborgs, the heroes can talk to each other via their internal channels. So they're often double tuning the heroine without any idea. It'll take her a while to figure out what's going on, but in the meantime, they're coordinating their seduction, their dating, their plans, who's going to say what next. And occasionally that leads to incredibly hilarious moments where she's like, wait a second, and then they pay for it. Jen, because you're on my screen.
Hi. Funniest things with me is, to be honest, I like making them a little bit stupid in the sense that they just don't get things, or like Tash in my series, he's all of a sudden got attached to the pet goat. I do not know where that came from. And then you've got the whole sense of the protection thing, the protective feelings they get for the females. I love bringing that protective side, and them sitting there and going, where did that come from? Why? How? And it's just the whole confusion with that. I just find that funny, especially when they say something stupid and you're actually physically slapping your own head going, dude, come on. And these are your characters, but they don't do anything you tell them to. So, Viola.
Okay, well, the funny parts, I guess, has to do with my characters basically being individually the only women on their bases. So they outrank the guys. So the guys have to do what they say. And then because the girls are in charge of the implants, they've actually boosted all of their strength. So they still look tiny and petite, but can lift one guy up in each hand. So that's where I get my fun. I sneak it in.
Awesome. Okay. Let's talk about other media on this topic with cyborgs. What are some of your favorites? Let's start with Susan. So it could be other books, movies, shows with cyborgs in them.
Oh, that's going to take a while. I love the cyborgs from Laura and Donner, Eve Langlais, Viola and Mina. I'm currently actually really enthralled with this series, the TV show. I'm trying to remember the name. I have blanked. Altered Carbon. Now, they're not necessarily cyborgs, but their entire consciousness is downloaded into a stack at the back of their neck, and they're technically immortal. You just move the stack from body to body, which I've found intriguing for different reasons. But I love so many. And I love the Terminator, where he turned out to sort of be the good guy. And I just love the idea of warriors who are more than men and struggling with their humanity, the whole Pinocchio effect. So all of them, basically, with Data on the side from Star Trek. I know he's an android, but that whole Pinocchio thing is in there too. Mina.
I knew you were going to say that. I love any and all cyborg books that I can get my grubby little mitts on. So I love Susan's version of them, and Eve's, Viola's, and Loran's. I love Jenn's. Film-wise, Altered Carbon is awesome. Susan and I have many conversations about this, and we bore Jenn to tears with conversations about Star Trek, so we won't even go there. I love Terminator. There was the Universal Soldier films. There was one that Kurt Russell did, and I cannot for the life of me remember the name of it, but it was one where he had a tattoo on his cheek. So it's the whole soldiers that are bred for war, that just intrigues me, and combine that with, exoskeletons, and I'm totally there. So, yeah, I'm just a sci-fi nerd, and I will watch anything. So I'm going to click on Jenn now.
There we go.
Yeah.
My first delve into cyborg books was Mina and Susan, if I'm honest. I've read sci-fi romance, but it's usually about aliens stealing men. Oh, but they do that too. Obviously, my cyborg film 80s is Universal Soldier, Terminator, things like that. But then you've got the new DC films, which are bringing in our very own cyborg from that, which is so intriguing to see how they do that. To be honest, they're all brilliant. And I did grow up on Star Trek from my mum, so I'm Babylon 5 and things like that. So anything that whacks in a bit of 7 of 9, oh God, she's hot. Yeah. So to be honest, it's a lot of influences for me that I enjoy, but I'm not a sci-fi nerd. I'm not a such and such nerd. I like them all. But I am an 80s nerd. So. Viola.
Okay, well, for me, it would have to be Cybermen, Daleks, the Borg. They're all great cyborgs. They're truly magnificent to watch. And then you just take them and you make them so human. But that Cybermen episode where the female officer had gotten transformed, and she's crying tears of oil, and I did my best for Queen and Country, and I'm like, oh my God, she's still in there. So that was
one. Yeah, that was it.
Yeah, it's definitely a good one. So it's when they can make you emote, when they can make you think about where they came from, who they were. Those are the truly great, cyborg things in modern. What's it? I've been writing, so my words are kind of gone today. And yeah. But yeah, no, I generally like all sci-fi, all fantasy. I've seen the Altered Carbon. I love the idea of the stacks, and it reminded me that I have another cyborg that I completely forgot about in a superhero series, but that's not what we're talking about today. So, I will conclude that. Yay, cyborgs.
I gotta say, I'm surprised nobody mentioned RoboCop. Especially Jenn, since she's so 80s.
That film traumatized me, if I'm honest.
Mhm.
That whole
It was
torture
pretty
scene at
dramatic.
the start. I still can't watch it now. My husband laughs because I leave the room for that. Because I am the world's biggest wuss. I will cry at anything. Mina and Susan will tell you full that I will cry at literally anything. So that kind of scene pulls at my heartstrings, and I have to walk out the room. The new RoboCop, because it's got the dude out of Alton Carbon in, I can take that a little bit more because he is hot and he only gets blown up, so it's not too bad.
All
I'm a
right.
wuss. I can't help it.
Well, I mean, I gotta be honest, that's probably one of the reasons why that movie sticks with me too, because it is brutal. But that was my introduction to Cyborgs, and the whole idea of this guy who's now, almost totally robotic, and he's not supposed to have any of his memories, and yet he's dreaming about his old life, and that, it really does tug at the heartstrings. Okay, let's go on to how do you guys think the genre has changed in the past 5 years? Have you seen any big trends come and go or anything like that?
The Mars needs woman trope has exploded in the last few years.
Sorry, the what trope?
Mars needs woman trope, which is aliens coming to Earth and stealing the women. That one's gone nuts.
I kind of get to hear that one there.
Yeah.
Hey, I made a lot of money on that one.
Yeah, me too. Got a lot of books.
Everybody wants off the planet.
We do now.
That's a good one. That's really true, because you see that everywhere, like with aliens coming to steal women, with aliens coming to steal men, with humans on another planet, with aliens who are stealing them. Like, it's just crazy. Anything else? Like, have you guys seen any other trends specifically with cyborgs, maybe?
Not so much with cyborgs. The other trend that I've noticed is a lot more traditionally paranormal. So shifters coming into space. So we've got dragon shifter aliens, werewolf aliens, that kind of thing. I've noticed there's a lot more of those at the moment, but I haven't noticed that trend creeping into cyborg and the kind of the hardest edge of sci-fi romance, if that makes sense.
I think there's also been a trend towards, there's almost two different kinds of science fiction romance now, where there's got this, the true hard sci-fi people will scream when I say this, but there's harder sci-fi romance, and then there's lighter sci-fi romance. So it's sort of split into two subgenres of those who are writing with more tech and more research, and then those who are just going dragons in space. Now, I write dragons in space, so I do them both.
Right. Yeah, I think that's absolutely a valid idea. That you've got, you've also got the have to have sex to save the world sci-fi romance, which can be really fun. Mm-hmm. But sometimes that's not quite what you're looking for, and it's sometimes harder to find the more sci-fi romance.
I think with sci-fi, it's such an adaptable genre that you can have people will shoot me for this, but saying the fluffy sci-fi, which is more sci-fi light, and it's a good entry point in. If you want to stay there, you can stay there. You can have all those that side of things that's more emotional, but then you can graduate on to the harder side of it, with the tech, with the space opera-ish type thing. There's a whole sliding scale there, and none of them are more valid than the other, and they're all totally enjoyable to read and write.
Yeah, that's one of my favorite things, is that I started with the fluff that had a bit more of the hard sci-fi in it, and then I went fluffier because that's what people wanted, and then I can still take out the hard sci-fi and start a new series every now and again. I can get whatever I want while giving the readers what they want.
Totally with you.
Yep.
Speaking about that, the whole idea of what readers want, and sometimes they want the fluffier stuff than the harder stuff. Do you find it difficult to find your audience with this subgenre? Because I know that when my co-author and I wrote our sci-fi romance series, that was one of the things that we struggled with. We had people who would read it and say, I don't really read sci-fi, and we didn't quite find like a really good audience. Do you guys run into that at all? Let's start with Susan.
I think sci-fi is generally booming as more and more readers are discovering it as they're looking for something new to read, something interesting. Kindle Unlimited has introduced a whole bunch of people to science fiction romance who wouldn't otherwise have done it. So yeah, there is an audience out there. Sometimes it can take you a little while to build up. And I have found that in general, paranormal and sci-fi are sort of sisters, but there's not as much crossover as I expected there to be between the two genres. I read them all, but apparently not everybody does.
Yeah, I would 100% agree with that. Mina, what are your thoughts?
I think we're actually aided quite a lot with the proliferation of good science fiction now on things like Netflix, Amazon Prime, that kind of thing, particularly things like Altered Carbon. They're bringing more of the harder edge of science fiction in, but still retaining the humanity and the not romance, but the relationship angles in there. I mean, in Altered Carbon, I absolutely adored Poe's struggle all the way through that series. But it's a good jump-off point for people coming in. That kind of Altered Carbon's whole the very hard sci-fi nature of it wouldn't have been something that we could have done maybe 15 years ago. But now it's becoming more and more prevalent in modern series, modern fiction. So it's helping us a lot because people are more exposed to it and they're like, oh, okay, this isn't putting me off as much. That's my take on it. Anyway, I watch everything. So perhaps that's just me noticing that more.
No, I think it's real. Also, if you want to see Mina really light up, The Expanse.
Oh God, don't start. Yeah, oh yes. I'm a huge Expanse fan.
And
she's giving away all my secrets now.
For me, it's I'm first and foremost a reader, so I am one of those really weird readers that will cross over from paranormal to sci-fi and love every moment of it. And I really don't get why people don't do it more, because paranormal and sci-fi are side by side in their versatility and the fact that you can go to escape reality. That's the whole point of them. So when readers tell you that it's not believable, it's like, hello, it's not supposed to. Which is why I don't delve into contemporary, because as a lot like Susan, if it doesn't have furs, fangs, or pull out a gun, ray gun, or whatever you want to call it, then it's not interesting to me. So I do think, as Mina said, that the world now with what's available to view has made a huge difference on the world for sci-fi and for people getting into it. So yeah.
And Viola, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, now that the camp has been removed from like TV-wide science fiction, where it's not all, not all, we'll say, early Doctor Who, with the lovely, the plungers and everything coming at you. It's the lines between science fantasy and science fiction can blur quite a bit more frequently, and it's kind of nice. I do it all the time, and the readers really seem to enjoy it, and they make the transition from one to the other seamlessly because I don't tell them it's happening. That's it.
All right, so we had another question from the audience. D. Hart would like to know, do you ladies find that more of reality is coming into cyborg romance?
Yes, absolutely. As the technology is catching up, it's becoming less and less like science fiction and more like the next medical step. So that's personal observation. But about 20 years ago, there was Beyond 2000, a program in the United States, and they were showing artificial limbs that looked like real limbs, but they had, the metal exposed so that you could see what was going on in there. And it's like, that now is something that's possible. People can have it and connect it to the nerves in their arms. And 20 years ago, it was just hey, we spent $2 million on this, and now it's, hey, it can be had for $20,000. So I'm going to say Jenn's next.
Yeah, I agree. It has, with the advances in medicine and things nowadays, things that we saw on TV 20 years ago seems more and more realistic. I'm still waiting for the Hottie aliens to land, because I want first dibs on that when that happens. But it's weird how you see a lot of the programs, like everybody going, "Oh, we're expecting the zombie apocalypse now. Are you prepared?" That stuff is scary because I can see that happening at some point, which is why I've got a bow and arrow. But yeah, I agree. It's till everything's merging a little bit, and I don't like it. It's scary. Mina.
I've got to agree with Viola on the advances in medicine. Obviously, with my husband's condition, I do tend to research quite a lot, particularly into exoskeletons. And so maybe 10, 15 years ago, these were these huge things that they had to wear. And even now, they're starting to develop prototypes that are much, much smaller and form-fitting. So I'm hoping at the point that he eventually will end up in a wheelchair that, you know, it might be something that fits into a pair of jeans. So I can really see that happening, and I hope to God it does. I really, really do. Susan.
I'm with the other ladies. The line between what is currently possible versus what should. So it's actually tricky to try to make your stuff more advanced, because literally what you thought of 5 years ago as theoretical is now possible. And so it makes it's challenging in a different way, but it's also really cool to be living in these times and see this stuff evolving so quickly towards all sorts of new features.
Very true. It's a good reminder that we're living in the future. Yeah.
Good Orphaville. Yeah.
Let's see. So we have time for a few more questions. If anybody in the audience has some, please add them to the chat beside the YouTube video. I'm going to go back to the moderator questions that I have. What's something you'd love to do in this topic but haven't yet? Or something that you'd love to see someone else do? And the wilder, the better. Let's start with Susan.
Oh boy. I'm going to be doing it soon. So the Drift series already has one spinoff in the Nova Force, which is basically NCIS in space. And now I am going to spin off what I call the Haven series, which is cyborgs and a new alien race called the Vardarians are going to be colonizing a planet. So instead of being stuck in a tin can in space, they're going to be stuck on a strange new world and figuring out how to survive there and how to coexist with each other. So it's going to be a whole new set of challenges, and I can't wait to start writing that. Mina.
Mine would be, it's sort of like kind of a flip side of the cyborg thing. I have a series planned for, it's a group of veterans, and they have mobile tank suits. So they'll all be ladies, all over 40, who have been medically discharged, and they get back together and cause havoc, basically. That's it. That's what I'm really looking forward to. So, Viola.
Oh boy, let's see. I'm looking forward to what happens after the war has kind of simmered down and they have to try and find a normal with Earth kind of blocked off from them. Earth doesn't want them back. They're too freaky. So, and some of the earliest experiments are now dug up out of storage and have to deal with A, there's no more war for them to fight, and B, they're not right anymore. So yeah, it's gonna be odd to write a not fighty book. Not fighty, not blasty, just people coming to grips with the new normal. And the new normal is that they took the rocket launcher out of their forearm. So I haven't written a peacetime book before. Jenn.
Thank you. For me, with this being my first cyborg series, it'll be nailing the menage trope. Because apparently, according to Susan and Mina, 2 of my boys like each other. Definitely didn't plan that when I was writing them. So I've got to go into that. I've never done that before. So for me, it will be finishing this series and doing that. So
Awesome. Okay, so we have a couple questions from the audience. Let's go with from Amanda. I have not read a Cyborg book yet. A suggestion where to start? Anybody want to jump in on that?
Anybody who's in this chat, I'm pretty sure all of us have books that are available everywhere for you to grab.
Is there one in particular that you think that she should start with?
Well, actually, I'm going to be totally selfish and say mine. Double Down is the first book in my Drift series, and it's free right now in all places. And you can find it on my website.
Well, that's always a bonus.
Yep. Guys, anyone? All right, fine. Jen.
Picking on me for right. Betraying Corin will be out at some point this year because it's being re-released. So because it isn't out yet, these guys here, Mina's sci-fi. Sorry, put my teeth back in. Lothar series, guys. If you want to read a sci-fi series, Lothar series will blow your mind. Viola, I'm currently on Amazon getting your books right now.
Stop it! Don't touch him. Put him down.
I'll also recommend M.K. Eden and her series. That was one of the first sci-fi series that I ever read, and I absolutely adored it. And Susan's Bride series. Oh my god, it's amazing. So do that. Yeah, they're my recommendations. Mina.
For Cyborgs, definitely Susan's. Then there's Eve. She does some awesome Cyborgs. Lorraine Donna. Donna McDonald. Viola writes awesome Cyborgs. Yeah, there's just so many. Just go and grab book one of every Cyborg series you can because they are all awesome. Did we do Viola already?
No, Viola hasn't been done yet. Yeah, I agree wholeheartedly with Mina. I said just pick the first book in every series of every author that you can find. Use the Amazon suggestions. You know, people who bought this other one, and see if they're cyborgs. If you want a non-traditional cyborg that's very non-traditional, I have a superhero series called Team 8, and the first character is a cyborg, and her name is Made, M-A-D-E. And she gets crushed to death in the first chapter, so very non-traditional. And she's a lot of fun.
For the first chapter?
No, not for the first chapter. After that. Yeah.
So your books are basically like RoboCop, where it's going to traumatize me first, the start.
No, you'll like it. It's very feminine affirming, and she has fine relationships with both men and women, like not sexual relationships, but just social relationships. However, one person done her wrong, and she's going to find him.
Nice.
All right.
And the body count piles up.
Well, thank you, ladies. So we're just a few minutes before 1 o'clock. So if you wanted to talk about if you have any giveaways going for people who have seen the live stream and where they can find you or find the giveaways, that would be great. Let's start with Susan.
I am not doing a giveaway today, but you can find both Double Down, which is the first book in my Cyborg series, and Joran, Star-Crossed Alien Mail Order Brides are both free. You can find them on my website and all your various vendors. And my website is susanhayes.ca because I'm Canadian. So, Mina.
I'm not doing any giveaways today, but there's the first in my series, a number of the series are usually free. I cycle through them. So just go and check out my website, which is www.minacarter.com. And Jen.
I'm useless, but you can message me on my Facebook page. Head over to it. If you message me, then you'll be up for an advanced reader's copy of the revised Betraying Corin that'll be due out later on this year. Thank you, Viola.
Well, I can be founded. Oh, I got to get back to writing. At on Facebook as at Viola Grace. You can join my readers group at Viola's Readers. I'm not giving anything away today, but I am about to trot over to Smashwords and put Assessing Survival and maybe the first 2 or 3 books in the Mechanical Advantage series down to 99 cents just for the next month of, or till the end of May. So they're having a reader sale on there since people are trapped indoors and trapped with their Kindles and their other reading devices. Smashwords is having a sale, and that of course is knocking prices down at Kindle and elsewhere. So yeah, that's where you find me. And my website is about 4 months out of date at any given time.
Well, thank you everybody for being here. Thank you to the audience for watching, and thank you especially to our panelists for joining us for this great discussion. I wish you all the best, and I guess we'll sign off. Take care.
Bye.
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 And we are gonzo.